Hey everybody, welcome to an update video on the one-man army Guardian build, the Dominating Blow build. Today we're just going to go over a quick Syndicate safe house here at level 82. It was supposed to be level 83, but unfortunately I think I didn't manage to get it in the T16 map, which is fine. Just to re-go over how the build plays a little, we've made a lot of upgrades. We've managed to take down Cyrus Awakener 8 with one dumb death, so nothing too crazy. But I'm very impressed with how far the build has managed to go and the improvements that we've managed to make over the last couple weeks to make the build, for example, Awakener 8 viable and to be able to clear out even more of the content throughout the game. The only thing really left to try out with this build would be Uber Itziri and Uber Elder, both of which I'm willing to do very happily, especially as Uber Itziri is so cheap this league. But Uber Elder is a lot more expensive, and I know with my last version of this build, it took probably 8 Shaper sets before I was able to finally figure out how to take down Uber Elder. And in this league, the sets are incredibly more expensive, so we're gonna, I don't know, we may or may not end up doing Uber Elder this league. Not that it's that mandatory, but we're doing a Syndicate safe house to sort of display the massive single target damage when we've got all our minions up. Everything absolutely just shreds. Like none of those, I've never been worried. The Katarina phases for the high level mastermind go down in seconds. You just end up spending time. You end up spending time just dodging and evading, while she's immune most of the time. Interesting. Okay, well, we've got some decent loot here, but we're not going to worry too much about that. We're going to go into our path of building, take a look at some of the changes we made. We're going to go over our gear. Oh man, did I really make it so that these are all basically crafting benches? No actual loot? How should you run? There you go. We got some incubators. Great. Fantastic. Well, what a depressing safe house. Level 82. Lame. Okay. So we've made a few big changes. We've upgraded some of our gear. Previously, this was a very budget item or a budget gear setup because our Scourge Claws were the only real expensive thing. Everything else was a chest we 5-linked ourselves, etc., etc. We've upgraded significantly using the currency we've just made from this build and nothing else, and we've still got plenty of currency, as you can see here. So first off, we upgraded to a chest that gives us a shit ton of life. We've got 145 flat life, 14 extra from strength, and 9% increased maximum life. So we've managed to bring our life threshold up to 7,500. We could squeeze out a little more, but we'd be giving up our resistances, which are currently all capped. Even for elemental weakness, our resistances are absolutely perfect. We're at 75 chaos. In fact, we're over on chaos. But so we could change out some gear pieces. We could actually get a better belt. Is one of the few things that we could upgrade cheaply at this point. Our boots do only have 10% movement speed, but they've got 128 life, 30 chaos res, which is about all we want, and a little bit of armor. Our armor is still pretty poor. We're at only about 5,000, but our movement speed doesn't matter too much when we're whirling a blade. Whirling a blading, all about. Yeah. A couple other upgrades we could get are for our Uber Labs. Commandment of the Grave surprisingly doesn't seem to be triggering all that much, and I don't think the minions help us out a ton. Obviously we don't need the mana regeneration from our boots here, so we'd probably want to swap that into life regen or something like that. And then our hat is explosive arrow deals 40% increased damage, which is whatever. We got a decently good amulet that allocate. We put death attunement on it, so now we're running 3 specters, 2 frenzy, and a power charge specter. And it's got just a decent amount of life with a little bit of increased max life. Ooh, I should have divined this before I corrupted this. Wow, I'm really dumb. Oh, that's a little bit disappointing. We could have an extra 2% life on there. That's okay. A bunch of resistances on our amulet. That's about it. And then we turned it into a talisman with, what's his name? Jorgen in research, actually, the safe house that we just did. So that's good. The reduced mana cost to skills has been fine. Now we're operating on a 6-link, which we'll go over in a second. So if we're not leeching, we are just barely not sustaining mana. Ironically, our boot enchant with Convocation is letting us sustain mana, but we get leech for that, so that's not a big issue. We upgraded one of our rings here. The extra damage to attacks is irrelevant. The extra energy shield is irrelevant. It's just the 72 max life, 5% increased max life, and then a decent chunk of cold and chaos resistances. Both our rings we've anointed for Blight to have Scout Towers damage. Our weapons are the exact same. Our helmet's the exact same. This helmet is fine. Like, you could get a better helmet. I haven't really found one that strikes me. The +2 to level of socketed minion gems is handy. It's not crazy. We are still... we are still running some Phantasm support because, I don't know, I enjoy having extra minions, and we don't really need the extra damage on Summon Holy Relic, though it is absolutely busted. So you could very well go for that. And no big worry, especially with Commandment of the Grave, we get to run a few extra minions, so that's whatever. Yeah, so our chest piece is one that we've been working on for quite a while. It's a 6-link. I did end up spending, I think, a good 6 exalts worth of fusing to 6-link it, when it should normally only be 3.5 to 4 exalts worth to, like, buy the prophecy or to use the bench recipe. It's 1,500 exalts, or 1,500 fusings, which is about like 4 exalts worth of fusings currently. So that's a bit of a pain, but we got this 6-linked, and now we're running Impale. We'll go over that in just a second, but everything else is just a shit ton of life. We're losing a decent amount of armor. Like, we could probably get up to 10k armor, but we'd probably be back down to like 6.5, 7k life for that, and that's not a change I'm willing to make. We've got a little bit of extra physical damage reduction from our talisman here. We usually have a decent amount of endurance charges up to give us a little more physical damage reduction. We've got Vigilant Strike, and then with either our... where is it? Flesh and Stone, or with a Stibnite Flask, we're blinding enemies, and then we're running a Granite and a Basalt. And with our Granite and Basalt up, we're hitting 16,000, 17,000 armor, and the extra 20% flat from the Basalt Flask. So I'm not super worried about the physical damage we're taking. The other main change is, obviously, we are running on a 6-link now. And there are a couple different options with your 6-link. But we have gone for running Impale and Dread Banner. And running Impale and Dread Banner, we get our Sentinel of Dominance default attack, DPS, up to 380,000 each, which when we have 9 is about 3.4 million damage per second just from having those 9 Sentinels up, not including our Sentinels of Purity. So with our Sentinels of Purity, we're hitting over 4 million single target damage per second, which is absolutely fantastic, of course. So the reason we are running Impale is the only higher damage setup that I've been able to find. As you can see with Ruthless and War Banner here, instead of hitting 380,000, we're hitting 330,000. This Path of Building doesn't calculate the Impale, so I've calculated that myself. I'll go over the math for that in just a second. But obviously War Banner and Ruthless doesn't beat out Impale and Dread Banner. The nice thing about running Impale is there's actually not really any ramp-up time, because each minion procs each other minion's Impale, so it only takes 7 attacks from any number of minions to get the maximum Impale stacks on. So it doesn't take us 7 attacks, it doesn't take each minion 7 attacks, it's just, I mean, each minion attacks once in the span of less than 1/10 of a second, basically. They all jump on and jump on the guy. So there's that. Obviously our well, let's go over this story for a second here. So if we take out Ruthless and run Bloodlust here with War Banner, we're hitting 360,000. Now that is assuming the enemy is bleeding, and we are not making enemies bleed unless we're hitting them with our Vulnerability Curse, which we're getting from our Curse on hit Vigilant Strike. So that will only apply to single target and only when we apply our curse. We could run Chance to Bleed, and a decent way to do this would be socket in Chance to Bleed elsewhere on one of your minions, and then we'd have that. But instead, we can just run Impale with Dread Banner, and according to War Banner, it doesn't actually increase the accuracy at all. You can see our accuracy is listed as 100%. If we unsocket the War Banner, it still lists our accuracy as 100%. So if this isn't calculated properly, War Banner might be slightly better, and then maybe we would want to go Bloodlust, but currently it seems like Impale with Dread Banner is the way to go. And the reason for that is math incoming. Skip a few minutes ahead if you don't want to worry about that. So Impale adds 10% of the damage that an enemy has taken from a hit for the next 5 attacks. Which means that since Impale stacks infinitely number of times, but it only applies for 5 attacks, each hit that impales is doing an extra 50% damage, because it's doing 10% extra damage 5 times. So we've got 10% extra damage times 5 times is 50%. Now, we do only have approximately a 62% chance of impaling. So we're only getting about a 31% damage multiplier from that. But we have times 1.81 here. We have 81% approximately increased impale effect, which means that our damage multiplier is actually 0.56 for these two. I think my math is a little wrong. It should be about 0.58, but that's regardless. So if we take our, we've got our War Banner disabled. If we take our Dominating Blow with Bloodlust disabled and Impale enabled, we take that 244,000 damage per second. So we go 1.56, which is the damage multiplier, times 244. I mean, we can multiply it out here, but 244. It brings us to 382,000 damage per second per Sentinel of Dominance. Now, the Impale banner itself is a little better than the War Banner, so it also helps out our Heralds of Purity slightly better as well. But as you can see, we're hitting an easy 382,000. Just to go in here, make sure we've got Feeding Frenzy active, which is giving us a decent amount of DPS. Frenzy charges, our minions almost always have Frenzy charges because we're running 2 Frenzy Spectres. We are usually with power charges up, but it's less than a 10% more damage. That's whatever. We do have at least 5 allies around, so that gives us extra DPS there. We've usually been hit, but that doesn't change anything. Cast a spell, yes, but that doesn't change much. The enemy is maimed. The enemy is bleeding. The enemy is blinded most of the time, but those don't change our damage. The main thing here is that the enemy is intimidated. So that helps as well. You'll see that intimidated is actually applying less than 10% increased damage taken because we've got so many sources of enemies take increased damage, which is another reason why this might work better. As a Necromancer, you can see as a Necromancer, even just unnatural strength gives us 21% more damage, gives all our minions more beef. And then Bone Barrier would allow us to keep our minions alive a little better. I do believe I have footage still from the Awakener 8 kill, which would be nice. I might upload a video of that with some discussion of other opportunities to change the build around as well. But all in all, I've been very impressed with how this has gone on. I mean, the Awakener fight itself is a bit of a clusterfuck, but we've managed to make it work, obviously. We've made a shit ton of currency out of this league, just running all the content, all the maps, synthesis bosses. We were running a Cortex boss as a party, and with 4-person life it was rough, and we ended up running out of portals. So at some point I'd like to try another Cortex boss fight and maybe show that off, but all in all, I've been absolutely shocked at how great it's gone. We honestly probably don't want to be running Val Summon Skeletons. We should probably be running Val Haste instead. And the other thing you could do is if you made Steel Skin a cast when damage taken, you could probably fit the spots in here, possibly without running Val Haste. Or you could run, in this slide, you could run Desecrate and Flesh Offering. So if we did automate our build a little more, we could actually be running a Flesh Offering, which would get us from 240,000 to, where are we at here? 240,000 base to 270,000 base, and we could theoretically run a Val Haste, which would get us, oh my god, to 300,000 per minion. So without too many major changes, we could be doing 300,000 times 1.56. it would be about 468,000 per Sentinel of Dominance. Times 9 is 4.2 million just from our Sentinels of Dominance alone. So with a couple other changes we could get to there, but I've been enjoying actually having the self-cast Steel Skin, and mostly I'm lazy and don't want to move my gems around. It could very much be worth it, but for now I'm very happy with what we've managed to do, and where the build can start on a budget from Brightbeak and just straight up trash budget gear, clearing through red maps, going all the way up to easy killing Awakener 8, Hydra, all the Elder Guardians, all the Shaper Guardians. Pale Council bosses don't hold up. Like that fight is mostly running between the other bosses to each other. So honestly, I'm very impressed with how this build's gone, and unless this receives any major changes, it's probably going to be my league starter next league. I've tried a couple other builds. I've been working on that mine build, and it's fine. I've been working on a poison build and a Essence Drain, Soul Rend sort of build, and none of them are grabbing me, and I've been trying to level up a sort of easy Impale duelist that's a little more defensive than this, maybe a little less life, but a little more defensive layers, and then running Cyclone or something so that you can move while obviously taking damage. So all in all, this build has been absolutely fantastic. I couldn't ask for anything more other than maybe a slightly less rippy league, but we've been learning a lot about fighting the Metamorphs. When you fight the Metamorph, your goal is to get it to spawn as quickly as possible, use your Vigilant Strike once it spawns, and try to DPS it down as quickly as you can. And then once it starts making the spare minions, all you do is you go focus down the rares, get those auras, and let your minions do all the dirty work. You don't actually have to beat up the main guy, except every now and again to try and keep your curse, your vulnerability curse, because it does only last, it does last 11 seconds, so that's about the lifespan of most Metamorphs. So if you're looking for a build to play, this is absolutely stellar. It's incredibly easy to play, it's incredibly easy to gear, and you actually have a lot of freedom. I would suggest maybe trying out a Necromancer version, and next league probably I'll be starting with that. Turns out Guardian is actually one of the more played classes right now, so you're not even getting the hipster Guardian extra sauce, so you might as well go Necromancer and just be a claw-wielding melee Necromancer. You know, hipster enough. So anyways, I wish everybody good luck. Have good maps, have good unique maps, have fun bosses, enjoy the heck out of this league. This league is great. Stop whining about Metamorphs, don't make them too tough, and if you do make them too tough and die 6 times like me, well, then you made your own bed, lie in it. So, everybody have a good day, and we'll see you soon in another boss killing video or montage.